They say churches are sanctuaries. I say some of them are just very good at keeping secrets buried. Welcome to Shadowcross Church in Boston, a place of soaring arches and hushed shadows, where the cleaning supplies aren't just for dust. My name is Clara Evans, and I came here seeking peace, a place to forget. Instead, I found myself living by 3 strange rules just to stay alive. What's the creepiest place you've ever worked? Tell me in the comments below. And if you're brave enough to step into Shadowcross after midnight, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules and ring that bell. Because here, the light doesn't just shine, it judges. The first cleaning begins now. Well, I came to Shadowcross Church to be closer to God. Or maybe just to be somewhere quiet enough to finally forget him. My sister, Sarah, she vanished 3 years ago, leaving behind nothing but a hole in my life, and her old Bible with a single cryptic passage circled in red ink. Now I sweep the floors of this ancient Boston church, a place where the lingering scent of frankincense and lemon polish can't quite mask a fainter, more persistent odor that clings to the air after midnight. Something coppery and sweet, like old pennies and decay. The head nun, a woman whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles and piety, gave me the janitorial job and 3 rules for my spiritual and physical safety. Don't touch the stained glass when red light appears. If you see blood on the altar in the early morning, clean with holy water, not regular water. When you realize you've been working here since last century to atone, welcome to eternal redemption. Welcome to eternal redemption. The last priest, Father Huey, he disappeared a month ago. The Archdiocese says he just walked away, but I found his mop and bucket next to the main chapel's grand stained glass window. The water in the pail stained a deep, brilliant crimson. My life here was a quiet, monastic routine. I was Clara Evans, the janitor, not Dr. Evans, the doctoral candidate who had a breakdown after her sister disappeared and walked away from a promising career in religious history. Here, I was just a ghost in blue coveralls, sweeping away the sins and sorrows of the day. The church was a Gothic giant, all soaring arches and hushed, shadowed corners. It was beautiful, but it was a cold beauty. A watchful one. On my 3rd night, Sister Mariana, the ancient noon who had hired me, shuffled up to me while I was polishing the brass lectern. Her eyes were cloudy with age, but they held a flicker of sharp, unsettling lucidity. "The rules, child," she'd whispered, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. "You remember the rules? They are not just words. They are walls. Keep the walls strong." She patted my arm with a hand that was as light and brittle as a bird's wing, then shuffled away, humming a discordant hymn. I dismissed it, as I always did, as the ramblings of a mind lost to time. It was later during that same shift that I met him. Aaron Lenz, the electrician. He was working late, he said, upgrading the ancient temperamental wiring. He was quiet, unassuming, with kind eyes and a shy smile. He offered me a sympathetic look. "Tough job, keeping a place this old from falling apart," he said, his voice soft. "Heard about Father Hugh. Such a sad thing. He loved this church. He seemed like a nice man, a welcome spot of normalcy in the suffocating piety of the place." I finished my shift well after midnight. The vast chapel was empty, silent, save for the groaning of old wood. As I was locking the main doors, my gaze was drawn to the magnificent stained glass window that dominated the western wall. It depicted the martyrdom of Saint Sebastian, a symphony of brilliant blues, greens, and golds. But as I watched, a deep arterial red pulsed from the center of the window, bathing the empty pews in a bloody light for a single silent heartbeat. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, leaving only the cool, pale light of the moon. I stood frozen, the coppery scent in the air suddenly, sickeningly strong. I tried to tell myself the red light was a reflection from a passing ambulance, a trick of the tired mind. But the memory of it, visceral and wrong, clung to me all night. The next morning, I arrived just after dawn. The church, cool and silent. As I entered the main sanctuary, I stopped dead. There, on the pristine white marble of the high altar, were 3 dark, viscous stains. They hadn't been there when I'd left. They looked, unmistakably, like fresh blood. My first instinct was to grab my industrial cleaning solution, to erase this violation from the sacred space. But Sister Marianne's strange, rambling voice echoed in my head. Clean with holy water, not regular water. It was insane, but the memory of the red light, the smell. I hesitated, slipping into the sacristy, the small room where the priests prepared for Mass. I found a small vial of holy water. My hands, trained for years in academic skepticism, felt foolish as I sprinkled the clear liquid onto the first stain. It didn't just dilute, it sizzled. A faint, whispering hiss rose from the marble as the dark crimson stain didn't just fade. It evaporated, vanishing into a wisp of foul-smelling vapor, leaving the marble pristine and cold. My blood ran cold with it. This was not a prank. Later that morning, Detective Michael Rowe arrived. He was young for a homicide detective, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing in a no-nonsense demeanor that felt abrasive in the hallowed quiet. He was in charge of Father Hugh's missing persons case. Clara Evans, he asked, his gaze analytical. You were one of the last people to see him, according to the logbook. He questioned me about Father Hugh's habits, his mood. I gave him rote, safe answers, my heart pounding. I said nothing of the light, of the blood. How could I? He mentioned that Father Hugh's office was locked from the inside, with the key still in the lock. A dead end. But I knew these old churches. I knew about the hidden latches and priests' bolts, relics of a time when privacy was paramount. After Rowe left, I went to the priest's office. A moment of searching, and I found it. A small concealed latch within the door frame. I slipped inside. The office was neat, orderly, except for the desk. There, lying open, was Father Hugh's personal journal. I felt the pang of guilt as I began to read, but the feeling was quickly replaced by a growing dread. The priest's elegant script grew more agitated with each entry. He wrote of his unease, of a pervading spiritual sickness in the church. He wrote of his research into the church's finances, specifically a massive, centuries-old endowment from a single benefactor, the Lenz family. The last entry, dated the night he disappeared, was a shaky, terrified scrawl. The benefactor is the devil. He is not a patron, but a keeper. He speaks to me from the glass. The light is the key. Saint Sebastian's martyrdom. The artist's signature is a lie. It is not a name, it is a map. Father Hugh's words became my obsession. I spent the next day poring over the church's historical archives in the dusty rectory library, cross-referencing parish records with the priest's notes. The Lenz family name was everywhere. For over 150 years, they had been the church's primary benefactors, their money specifically and repeatedly earmarked for the upkeep, preservation, and spiritual integrity of the St. Sebastian stained glass window. It was more than patronage, it was a vigil. Finding some interesting history, I jumped. Aaron Lenz stood in the doorway of the library, holding a dusty wiring schematic. His sudden appearance made my heart leap into my throat. Just curious about the architecture, I lied, quickly covering my notes. It's a special place, he said, his quiet smile not quite reaching his eyes. Lots of secrets. He offered to help me look up the original blueprints, a kind gesture that felt predatory. He steered me towards records of the bell tower, the organ, away from anything related to the chapel's foundation. He was watching me. That night, a storm rolled in over Boston. Thunder rattled the ancient church, and rain lashed against the windows, and in the main chapel, the red light returned. It wasn't a flicker this time. The St. Sebastian window blazed with a brilliant, hellish crimson light, bathing the entire sanctuary in a gory downpour. I stood frozen in the nave, watching as the image in the glass began to change. The figure of the martyred saint, usually depicted with an expression of serene acceptance, seemed to contort. Its face twisted in a silent scream of agony. The arrows piercing its body seemed to melt away, replaced by the flickering, licking shapes of flames. The figure was being burned alive, and the whispers began. Not from the wind, not from the rain. Not from the rain, they slithered from the glass itself. Distorted, reversed Latin phrases from the book of Revelation. A litany of damnation. I felt a powerful physical pull towards the window. A dizzying, hypnotic urge to walk forward, to press my hand against the glowing crimson glass, to offer something. I fought it, my body trembling, and took a step back, then another, fleeing the chapel. As I reached the narthex, the main entrance hall, I risked a glance back, and I saw him, Aaron Lenz. He was standing in the shadows by the baptismal font, not looking at me, but at the glowing window. And the expression on his face was not one of fear. It was one of rapt, ecstatic, reverent adoration. He was worshipping it. Aaron's look of worship shattered my last doubts. He wasn't just a quiet electrician. He was a part of this. The next morning, I called Detective Rowe. I know this is going to sound crazy, I began, my voice tight. I told him everything, the Lenz endowment, Aaron's suspicious behavior, the sealed-off records. I left out the whispers and the bleeding altar, sticking to the facts I could prove. To my surprise, he didn't hang up. Financial motive is still motive, Miss Evans, he said, his tone skeptical but professional. Father Hugh was looking into the endowment. Our electrician, Mr. Lenz, is a direct descendant of the original benefactors. It's thin, but it's a thread. I'll look into it. I turned my attention back to the last, most cryptic clue from Father Hugh's journal. The artist's signature is a lie. It is not a name. It is a map. I spent hours with a pair of binoculars, scanning every inch of the massive stained glass window from the choir loft. Finally, I found it. In the bottom right corner, where an artist's name should be, was a tiny, almost invisible maker's mark, a small shield emblem. But inside the shield wasn't a name. It was an etching, a miniature, simplified floor plan of the church, as it had been originally constructed in the 1800s. And it showed a room, a chamber, directly beneath the main altar, a space that didn't exist on any modern blueprint. The catacombs, how to get in. The main crypt was sealed. As I pondered this, Sister Marianne shuffled by, muttering to herself. The new saints sleep in the walls, she whispered as she passed me. But the old saints sleep below the new, under the dust. It was a riddle, but it was the key. In the church's main crypt, behind a newer 20th century memorial plaque dedicated to a series of recent priests prying it loose, I found a dark, gaping hole and a set of steep, stone stairs spiraling down into cold, musty darkness. The catacombs were silent, the air thick and choking with the dust of a forgotten century. I followed the narrow passage until it opened into a hidden, circular chamber. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, and my stomach churned. On a simple stone slab in the center of the room lay a skeleton, its bones stark white against the gloom. It was clad in the tattered, rotted remains of a priest's cassock, a ritualistic-looking knife, its hilt carved with the same spiral I'd seen on the Lenz family crest in the archives, was embedded in its ribcage. It was Father Hugh, And he was not alone. The chamber was a mass grave. All around him were dozens of older remains, skeletons piled in the alcoves, all bearing the same marks of ritual sacrifice. This had been going on for a very long time. My light fell upon the far wall. On it, sketched in charcoal with surprising skill, was a portrait of a stern-looking man in 19th century clerical robes. Beneath it, the name Brother Silas. And beside that portrait was another, more recent drawing, a family tree, meticulously rendered, tracing the lineage of the Lenz family. It ended with a single name, written in fresh, bold strokes. Aaron. As my light traced his name, I heard a deep, scraping groan from the tunnel behind me. The heavy stone door was sliding shut, grinding against the floor, plunging me into absolute, suffocating darkness. The sound of the grinding stone door was the sound of my tomb being sealed. Panic, cold and absolute, flared in my chest. I scrambled back, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the damp stone walls, illuminating the silent, accusing grins of the piled skeletons. I was trapped in a mass grave, a secret altar room, with the body of the man I had inadvertently followed to his doom. From the shadows near the door, a soft, familiar voice spoke, and my blood ran cold. I was wondering when you'd find your way down here, Clara. Aaron Lenz stepped into the beam of my flashlight. He was no longer the shy, kind electrician. His face was alight with a calm, zealous fire, his eyes shining with an unnerving intensity. In his hand, he held a knife, a perfect twin to the one buried in Father Hugh's chest. A pity, really, he continued, his voice echoing in the dead space. I was beginning to hope you would understand, that you would see the beauty in it. You killed him, I whispered, my voice a hoarse rasp. All of them. Killed. Aaron tilted his head, a look of genuine confusion on his face. No, I didn't kill them. I offered them. I purified them. He gestured around the charnel room. This is a holy place, Clara. The place where our order began. Where my ancestor first made the pact with our Crimson Penitent. He walked calmly towards the portrait of Brother Silas. He was a true visionary. He understood that faith is not a passive thing. It requires sacrifice, blood, pain. He offered himself to the church, and in return it made him eternal, a saint of the glass, a holy confessor. He's a demon, Aaron, a monster. He is a reflection. Aaron's voice rose, filled with fanatical passion. He reflects our sins, our doubts, and cleanses us of them. Father Hugh, he was weak. He saw a demon because his faith was riddled with doubt. He had to be purified. Your sister. My heart stopped. What about my sister? Such a tragedy, Aaron said, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. She came here, you know, years ago, asking questions just like you, so full of anger at God, such a potent, wonderful doubt. She made a beautiful offering. The penitent was sated for years after her baptism. The rage that filled me was a white-hot, blinding force, eclipsing all fear. He hadn't just killed her. He had consumed her, fed her to his monster, and now, Aaron said, his eyes gleaming, he is hungry again. And you, Clara, with your academic's mind, your historian's skepticism, you are a feast, but I won't just offer you. I will convert you. You will be my new high priestess. You will see the truth, and you will join me in the sacred work. As he spoke, the very air in the catacombs grew thick and heavy. A deep red light began to bleed through the cracks in the ceiling from the chapel above, casting the bone-filled room in a hellish, crimson glow. The whispers started, no longer faint, but a clear, sibilant chorus of reversed Latin, seeming to come from the very stones around us. Malakar, the Crimson Penitent, was here. Aaron Lung. I dodged. Years of grief transmuting into pure survivalist adrenaline. The catacombs became our arena. He was stronger, armed, but I was faster. Fueled by a fury he had so cruelly stoked, I used the environment, kicking up dust to blind him, using the uneven ground to my advantage. Up above, I could hear a faint, distant banging. Row! He'd come, but he was too far away. I scrambled past Aaron, back towards the sealed door, and fumbled in my pocket. The holy water. I threw the contents of the vial at the stone door, not at Aaron. It sizzled against the stone, and the whispers in the room momentarily faltered, screeching as if in pain. The holy water wasn't just for cleaning. It was a barrier, a weapon against the unholy influence seeping through the rock. It bought me a precious second. I saw the ancient, rusted lever for the door mechanism, and threw all my weight against it. With a groan of protesting metal, the stone door began to grind open. I burst out of the catacombs and into the main church, gasping for air that wasn't thick with the dust of the dead. But I hadn't escaped. I had only moved to a larger cage. The entire chapel was bathed in the blinding, blood-red light of the St. Sebastian window. The whispers were a deafening roar, a vortex of damning scripture. The shadows themselves seemed to writhe and stretch, coalescing into long, grasping tendrils. Detective Rowe was there, near the main entrance, his service weapon drawn, his face a mask of pale, horrified disbelief as he stared at the impossible light, unable to process the supernatural chaos he had walked into. Aaron emerged from the crypt behind me, his face contorted in a mask of pure fury. "You cannot deny him his sacrament," he screamed, his voice unnaturally deep, layered with the hissing whispers of the penitent. He was no longer just Aaron. The entity was pouring its power into him, using him as its physical avatar. He charged, moving with an inhuman speed and strength. I dodged behind a heavy oak pew, my mind racing. I couldn't fight him, not when he was channeling the penitent's power. "Clara!" Rowie yelled, taking a few hesitant steps forward. "What is going on?" "Don't let him get to the window," I screamed back. Aaron, ignoring Rowe, turned his gaze to the magnificent, terrifying window. "Oh, my saint, my penitent!" he cried, his arms outstretched. "I've brought you a doubter, but she is strong. Grant me your strength. Let me be your vessel. Let me show her the glory of your baptism." He was offering himself, trying to become a living conduit, a monster of flesh and shadow to destroy me. I remembered Sister Marianne's words, a fragment of her rambling that suddenly made perfect, terrifying sense. He feeds on the sinner's pride, child, on the doubter's fear, but the faith of a mustard seed. That is a bitter pill for a demon to swallow. It was a test of faith, a theological battleground. The penitent was a creature born of heretical, twisted dogma. It preyed on sin, on guilt, on doubt. It expected fear and defiance. It couldn't comprehend, couldn't process. Pure, unadulterated faith. It was my only weapon, my only chance. Aaron, his body now wreathed in flickering red shadows, cornered me before the great window, the source of all the horror. He was a nightmare made manifest, his eyes glowing with the penitent's crimson light. "Your final confession, Clara," he hissed, his voice a chorus of damned souls. "Confess your doubt. Confess your anger at the God who took your sister. Give it to him. Give him your pain." He wanted to break me, to make my soul a perfect, tainted offering. I looked past him, at the burning, tormented figure in the glass, at the vortex of malice and pain that had consumed my sister and Father Hugh, and in that moment, facing an absolute, undeniable evil, something shifted inside me. The years of academic skepticism, of anger, of hollow, aching grief, they didn't matter. There, in the belly of the beast, I found it, a single, tiny, desperate ember of the faith. I thought I had lost forever. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I dropped to my knees on the cold stone floor. Aaron laughed, a triumphant, ugly sound. Yes, kneel before your new god. Yes, kneel before your new god. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the window, and I began to pray. Not a prayer of fear or supplication. I recited the only one that mattered, the one Sarah had circled in her Bible all those years ago, the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want, I began, my voice trembling but clear, each word a small stone thrown against a tidal wave of malice. The effect was instantaneous. Aaron and the entity within him flinched as if struck. The red light from the window wavered. The whispers faltered, replaced by a sound of confused hissing. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, I continued, my voice growing stronger, fueled by a conviction I didn't know I possessed. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. My faith, pure and simple, was anathema. It was a language the penitent couldn't comprehend. It was a discordant holy note in its symphony of damnation. It could not feed on this. It choked on it. The entity, in its agony and confusion, turned its full, terrible power on the only available vessel, still tainted with the glorious sins of pride and murder. Its own keeper. No! Aaron screamed, his own voice breaking through the chorus. She is the offering, not me. I am your servant. The stained glass window behind him did not just shatter. It imploded, a vortex of razor-sharp, blood-red glass and screaming black shadow. The entity denied its intended victim, consumed its veiled acolyte. Aaron was lifted from the floor, his body dissolving, shredding, as he was pulled into the whirlwind. He screamed as his form was absorbed into the window, not as a reflection, but as a new, permanent figure in the pain. A tiny, screaming man, forever trapped in the fires of martyrdom, beside the Crimson Penitent. The red light vanished, the whispers stopped. A torrent of normal glass, now just blue and green and gold, rained down onto the altar, leaving a gaping, dark hole in the church wall where the window had been. Detective Rowe found me there, kneeling amidst the glittering shards, shaken but alive. The official story became the one the world could accept. Aaron Lenz, the disturbed descendant of a local family, was the leader of a deranged, murderous cult. He had killed Father Hugh and others over the years, and died during a final, violent confrontation with his last intended victim, causing massive damage to the historic church. Shadowcross was deconsecrated, its doors chained, the great window frame bricked up and plastered over, its secret entombed. I finished my doctorate. I found my purpose, not in quiet archives, but out in the world, consulting with law enforcement, helping them understand the twisted logic of cults and the darkness that can hide in plain sight. I carry the grief for my sister not as a wound, but as a shield. But last week, Rose sent me a file for a new case, a series of strange disappearances centered around an old historic library in Philadelphia. He sent a photo of the main reading room. It was dominated by a huge, beautiful stained glass window, depicting the weighing of souls on Judgment Day. It was a different artist, a different city, a different century. But I zoomed in on the photo, my breath catching in my throat. In the bottom corner, almost invisible to the naked eye, was the same tiny, shielded maker's mark. And in the crowd of souls awaiting judgment in the glass, I could have sworn I saw a new, minuscule figure, a man with a familiar, quiet face, holding a set of electrician's tools, his eyes wide with reverent, ecstatic horror. The order had more than one saint. The rot had spread, and my work, I knew with a chilling certainty, was far from over.